What is going on, comic fam? It's your boy, the Bearded Comic Bro, and I am joined by comic creator, writer, TV host. You wrote for Mad, you wrote for Robot Chicken, you've written comic books like Web of Spider-Man. Kevin Shinick, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here.
Man, I'm excited. You're in the midst of, at the time of this recording, and when this video drops, you have a new Kickstarter.
I do.
Host Mortem. Let's just, before we hop into that, because I'd be remiss if I didn't ask.
Of course.
Did you always have a love for comics growing up, or was this something that kind of came later in life?
No, I always had a love of comics. My first comic, I think, that introduced me to everything was perfect. It was Batman, The Untold Legend of Batman was a miniseries by Len Wein and Jim Aparo. And I just ate it up. And if you don't know it, it was the perfect miniseries. It was a great mystery, but also reintroduced you to every main character and villain in Batman's world. So I just was brought up to speed in like days.
I don't want to interrupt you, but is that the one with the cover with Batman driving the Batmobile and like Robin?
Exactly. It's a little flipped. Robin's driving the Batmobile.
Oh, Robin's driving and Batman's
jumping in the back.
Yes.
But yeah, it's one of those. I still get goosebumps. In fact, I at one point, if you've seen the video, I have a lot of comic book art behind me, and I was like, "Oh my God, maybe I can hunt down that cover or something like that." I did find it, but I thought, you know what? I don't need the exact thing just to. When I saw the sticker price, I was like, the memory is enough. The memory is enough. But it was such a memory, and as I like from that point on, I was hooked and just desperate for my parents to be murdered in an alleyway. So it was like, come on.
Or someone else that would then adopt you.
Exactly. Or I'd be stranded on a planet or something. Something exciting had to happen to me. So yes, I've always loved comics and read them religiously for many decades. And then I got hooked up and I write for a show called Robot Chicken, and I do voices and I'm a producer over there. And it was through that show that editor from DC approached me and said, "Oh, I loved your Batman sketch. I did this dopey Batman Arkham Asylum, but it was like Shawshank, And I was like, I'm so glad you love a sketch. I love Batman." And he was like, "Well, you should write a comic for us." I was like, "Don't joke about that." He's like, "I'm not." So my first foray into comics was a Batman story. So that just hit me off running.
That's so good. So, like we talked about earlier, like you've been involved in the pop culture zeitgeist, right, for a long time with Robot and writing for Robot Chicken. I feel like too, you have to have a wide knowledge of all these things,
Absolutely,
like Marvel and everything like that. So, when you were consuming all of that, where was this for you that then like shaped into like I want to pursue creating more comics and kind of crafting? Like you said, you had your run for Batman, you had your first issue with Batman, but then you did your Web of Spider-Man issues and things like that in that series. How did kind of all this knowledge that you've gained of just being a pop culture fan help you create comics?
Because I think comics kind of, whether they're directly related or the stories always have a semblance of something that's going on in the world. Mm-hmm. When DC reached out to me a couple of years ago, maybe more than a few now, and they said, and this is the way they worded it: everything that's ever been worth doing with Flash has been done. Do you want to jump on board? I was like, well, let me think about it. But then because I love pop culture, because I love stories and superheroes and all that stuff, I thought, well, I don't want to say yes to this unless I feel I can contribute something that's unique and something that's, memorable. And so all of a sudden, and the great thing about this particular run was it was Barry Allen. And when I grew up, my Flash was Barry Allen. And I know Wally's got thousands of fans, millions of fans, and I'm a fan as well. But Barry Allen was my guy. And so when it was him, I thought, that's so cool, what I love about him. And I so loved that Flash ring with his costume in there. And so I thought to myself, did we ever find out the origin of why or how or whatever he did with that ring? And I did all my research and I asked DC, and no one had ever touched upon it. So I came up with the story that kind of gives reasoning behind why and how he created that ring. And now it's part lore. But it's what I mean by you study things in pop culture, but it's really just what you love. It's stuff that you just ingest because it's the things that you go to on a daily basis.
Yeah. And We're gonna unpack more about your comic writing here, but I
Yeah, of
want to hop
course.
into your Kickstarter right now. You have a comic that's live on Kickstarter at the time, like I
Yes.
said, of this Host Mortem. Um, Tell the people what that is and what to
Of
expect.
course. So again, I'm gonna repeat it because sometimes when it trips off the tongue, it's host mortem, not post mortem.
Did I
Because
say post mortem? I'm
no, no,
sorry.
no, 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 no. You
Oh,
said host mortem, but
oh,
I want to make sure that I'm always
okay.
articulate so people
Yes.
don't
No.
go and look
Good.
for,
Okay.
you know what I mean? Because you say it quick, not you. I mean, anybody says it quickly, and they're like,
Yes.
I've done the same thing, and people repeat it back to me, going, "Oh, post mortem." I'm like, no, no, it's the whole joke. I used to host a show called Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego in the 90s. And I played myself as a time traveling detective. And, I love murder mysteries. And that was ages ago. That was the 90s. And I've since gone on. I've written, I mean, if you think of mystery wise, I wrote Scooby Doo and Kiss, which was, those mystery machines. I wrote the Mike Tyson Mysteries.
Yeah.
And there's and working on Batman, the world's greatest detective. So I feel like all roads were leading to this murder mystery graphic novel. But I love murder mysteries. I love film noir. I love all that stuff. So I had this idea of doing like a noirish murder mystery graphic novel, and I thought, yeah, but what's going to break through the noise? Because there are others like that. And like I said, it dawned on me. I was like, wait a minute, I played a time traveling detective, and since I wanted to go back to the 1940s, that covered that base. And then before me was a show called Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, hosted by Greg Lee, and he played himself as a classic 1940s gumshoe detective. So I thought, oh my God, we are the perfect couple to go back and try and solve mysteries, because the tagline is, or the pitch is, two fake detective game show hosts from the 1990s who have to go back and solve a series of real murders in the 1940s. Because we're playing detectives, and as game show hosts, we have all this knowledge in our head, all these random facts, but does it all add up to anything more than just, party jokes?
Yeah.
Or random conversation starters. Can we put all the facts we have in our head to good use and actually solve a murder with it? So it's kind of like if you remember the movie The In-Laws, or even The Odd Couple trying to solve a murder, because the truth is, Greg and I both hosted variations of Carmen Sandiego back in the 90s, but we hadn't met really. And for years, like over 20 years. And I ran into him at a film festival maybe 5 years ago, and we exchanged pleasantries, exchanged numbers, but that was it. Nothing happened. So
Yeah.
when I got this idea, I just called him out of the blue and was like, Greg, I want to do the story of two fake detective game show hosts from the 90s solving real murders in the 1940s. And he was like, I'm in. So I like to call him my muse because I wrote it. I got some wonderful artists. I'll
Yes.
rattle them off in a moment. But Greg kind of is allowing me to use his likeness, use his personality, and use what is now our great friendship that you could experience through this graphic novel.
Yeah. That's it's so cool. And I got to see a couple of the opening pages that just kind
Mm-hmm.
of set the stage for this, right? And you mentioned you have some great artists.
Yeah.
Holy buckets. Obviously we know how you got Greg on board now. How did you get your creative team then with the rest of the
So,
project?
yeah, I had a very specific look in mind. I wanted to
Yeah.
be noirish. I wanted to be taken seriously. I want all this stuff. And so I interviewed a lot of different artists. The great thing of working in this medium is you get to know people. But then someone suggested someone, and I got cross paths with Damien Torres, who's this wonderful artist who I quickly grabbed because I love his work so much. Um, and then when at first I had the idea, I had written a Star Wars novel a couple of years ago called Star Wars Force Collector, and I love the cover for that novel. And so the artist was a guy named Tony Foti. So I reached out to Tony and said, Tony, this is my idea. Can you come up with some concept art? And he did. So that was like the first cover of the book. And then, things snowball from there. With the story, very noirish, there are 4 issues which make up this 200-page graphic novel. Each issue, I kind of have very noir narration. Like someone narrates each issue, and it's someone different every issue. So I thought, what would be kind of cool is if I brought in a different style or a different art look for each issue. So when our fast talking 1940s receptionist is narrating the second issue, I brought in an artist named Andrea Schiavone, who has a great golden age look. And I figured that was that time. So this would really suit the story well, and it's been fun to kind of play with the different styles and the different times and all that stuff. I have to also add Pippa Bolin is doing my coloring. Taylor Esposito is doing my lettering, and it's just a fantastic creative team.
Yeah, it really is. Um, with something like Host Mortem, right? Like you obviously are tapping into something that you have a knowledge of. Comics, also hosting a game show. How much does that kind of play into the story and crafting it for you of taking your experience on Carmen Sandiego and infiltrating it into a comic book?
It totally does. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier of using what
Hmm.
and you're right. This encapsulates everything that I love: time travel, film noir, trivia, game shows, comedy, comics, graphic novels, all between two covers. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so in writing this story, no matter what job I'm doing, and I could be a director, a writer, a producer, the first hat I put on is my fan hat. Because I'm like, what do I want to see? And the same thing with that Flash story that I told you about. I was like, everything's been done, but what would interest me? And in some cases, like with Flash, I went smaller. I made a more intimate story as opposed to world saving and all this stuff. With this book, it was kind of like, wouldn't it be cool if along the way you learn random trivia, while you're reading this book, and you'd learn some helpful trivia? But at the core of it, it had to be a kick-ass murder mystery, because I don't want to go to it for jokes. I don't want to go to it just for any one thing.
Right.
And so again, being a huge murder mystery fan, I was like, I think I stumbled upon something that could be really engaging. And so that's how the book kind of is unfolding. And to be fair, I still have not shared with my creative team who the murderer is. So they're all writing in real time, trying to figure out as they go. But that helps me too, because then I know if they're on the scent or off the scent or whatever. And so that's why I'm excited for people to read it.
That's fantastic. So how much of in the process are you along with this Kickstarter in the writing? Is the whole thing written out already
The
or
whole thing's written. The script is finished. I think we're on book 2 already in terms of art being done. And so, our deadline is for next year to deliver this book. But we are right on schedule. And also, happily so, we funded our goal on the first day. Second day, we doubled it, which blew my mind. But there are still plenty of like stretch goals. And ultimately, I just want to get this book into as many hands as I can, because I really believe they're going to love it.
yeah, that's so great. And it seems like you're approaching it from the idea of if you like murder mysteries and have no connection to the world of Carmen Sandiego, you're still going to enjoy the book. If you're coming in because you're a fan, you grew up like all of us in the 90s, like with
Yeah,
Carmen Sandiego because PBS was free for a lot of us. And we're like,
totally.
we're
Exactly.
watching that.
The bottom line is too is that I don't have the rights to Carmen Sandiego,
Right,
nor am I tying it to just one thing. Greg and I have hosted many shows,
right.
but that term "host mortem" I thought kind of was a tongue-in-cheek nod. It gets it. We're definitely leaning into. It's the most popular show that people know us from.
Right.
And not for nothing, but there's a character in The Big Sleep of which this mystery revolves that's also named Carmen. So there are enough nods, and there's plenty of Easter eggs, a lot of visual gags, a lot of visual nostalgia for anybody who's looking for it.
Yeah. You you mentioned as well that there's a lot of options, right, on this Kickstarter. That is there something that, on the rewards that you're really like, I'm excited that we got to do this, or that you'd love for people to check out?
Absolutely. As if Kickstarter, you know that it's a community and people go there just as much as people go to the comic shops on Wednesdays. People are now going to Kickstarter on Mondays and Tuesdays to see the new books that are attempting to come out. And as a backer on Kickstarter, I get excited by like, oh, what do they have to offer? So again, just like I did with the story, I'm like, what can I offer that only I can offer? Now I do a lot of voiceovers as well. I did all of Robot Chicken and Mad. I'm the voice of Bruce Banner across Marvel's animated universe for a while. So I thought, well, one fun reward might be, since a lot of creators are also looking at Kickstarter, like, why don't I offer my voiceover services, to someone else's project? So there's a tier where you get the book and all these extras, plus the ability to have me do voiceover for your project. There's the typical things of like owning art from the book, which I've said before, but is kind of becoming a rarity in this
Yeah.
day and age, because all artists now use tablets. So unless you get a commission, you're very rarely going to get a page from a book or an actual story because they're all on tablets. But I said to Damien early on, I want you to save like a number of pages that we can, offer up as rewards. And he was like, "Oh, I'm on it."
Yeah. Do you have when you saw some of the pages coming in, where you saw like, I'm gonna save that one for
Oh my God, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, what made me realize this too was my artist on Web of Spider-Man. I was like, "Oh my God, I want to own that." And he was kind of like, and he was like, "Oh, it's on tablet. You should have told me." And I was like, "Oh, so now I know. Now I know to always say to someone like, 'Hey, can you draw this so maybe I can buy it from you?'"
yeah. But I love that, in the opening pages, the preview stuff that I got to check out, you have, you and, Greg's character,
Yeah.
at a Comic Con.
Mm-hmm.
How much of that is just like coming from like just real life experience right there of
That is just
embracing that con
ripped
life?
from the headlines. Exactly. That's again, it's a lot of us sitting at Comic-Con, signing merch, doing whatever, but what's weird about being a host sometimes is you're like, well, could I have done more? Should I have done more acting? Should I have done this? And all this information in my head now, can I put it to better use? So I'm a little at unrest when the story begins, and
Yeah.
that's kind of where I was when I came up with this idea for a book. so so again, calling on real life events.
Yeah, it's so cool to see. And again, looking at these pages, the art is fantastic. Does your process as a writer, does it change much from writing comics to then like when you're writing scripts and, writing for a TV show? And how does that process change if it does?
Yeah, absolutely. And it totally does. I think personally, comic books and graphic novels are deceivingly difficult because if you're doing them right, I find I always should have like a puzzle that I try and solve while I'm writing comics. One is to tell a story that's worth reading, right? That should be
Yep.
right out of the gate. But you still want to work in page turners. Like if you can end on on your odd size pages, you know what I mean, or where the page turn should be the reveal. You don't want to go over like 7 panels. You want to tell a story with as least dialogue as possible. You want to give the artist something awesome to draw that they're proud of in this. So there's a lot going into a comic or a graphic novel that you don't consider when you're writing a television script or a movie script, even a novel. You know what I mean? As daunting as those are, too, sometimes I'm like, wow, this would be done a lot quicker if it was just a novel, but it's not. It's a collaboration. And what you hope to get, and I've been fortunate to get, is, you write the script and you give it to your artists and you say, this is what I'm looking for. But if you've got great artists, they give you back not only what you wanted, but they also kind of plussed it in a way that you didn't even know how to articulate.
Yeah.
And I found that way with Tony Foti, with Damien, with Andrea, everybody, even Pippa with the coloring and the lettering. They come back and you're like, oh, this is even so much better than I had imagined.
Yeah.
So I'm blessed in that regard. And I have to say, we were talking about who in the comic book world and the connections. So I did a Batman comic years ago with the great Kelly Jones. And he and I hit it off, and we've been friends ever since. And so I'll tell you a funny story that I hadn't shared anywhere. Was I texted Kelly and I said, "Hey, would you consider doing a cover for my Host Mortem?" And we're all busy people, so like a couple of days went by and I didn't hear from him. I thought, oh, he's a friend. I don't want him to feel pressured. So I was just about to text, like, listen, don't worry about it if you don't want him. And I'm in the car, and it says, you have a text from Kelly Jones. Play. And I said, yes. And he just writes, of course. And in the car, I just go, oh my God, fantastic, oh my God. And then the car goes, send? And I was like, no, 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 no. And I was like, now the truth is my response to him was very similar to what I just said, but
Yeah.
it was just my organic, natural response of screaming in the excitement. And he has created this incredible cover that I think is it's so great that we're offering 2 versions, one colored. And a lot of Kelly's work looks great just in the moody black and whites. So we're offering a limited edition book with just the black and white cover that he came up with. So I was so pleased that he was able to do this for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean that seems like the natural reaction that you should have, like when you are when you growing up as a comic fan, right? Like you
Yeah,
grew up reading these things, and now
totally.
you're getting to work with some of these creators that you
Yeah.
probably admired as a kid, like the natural response should be, oh my God.
Exactly. It should be. I know you should never take it for granted, you
Yes.
know. Another funny story is when I first started working at Robot Chicken, we shared offices with different other people and stuff, and I met this guy, Jeff, that we hit it off immediately. And we became like fast friends. In fact, we were like, I feel like we were brothers in a past life. We were talking and stuff. And so the couple, a week went by or so, and then someone said, "Oh, guys, during lunch, we're going to go down and have cake for Jeff Johns." And I thought, "Oh, I'm going to get to meet Jeff Johns." And I went down, and it was my friend Jeff that I had met a week and a half ago. And it didn't. To me, he was Jeff, not Goeof. It was so funny. They're like, "Oh, you're Jeff John." I was just saying hi. And that just proves how organically friendly we were to one another. But like you said, you rub elbows with all sorts of people now.
And the universe Jeff's creating over with Ghost Machine right now is fantastic. So
I know. So, but that's what's crazy is, I'm in a position now where I'm working alongside my peers who are people that I have come up with, Jeff, Zeb Wells, we're all friends. And you have that besides people that you grew up knowing, like Kelly Jones, where you're like, oh my God. And yet they all deserve the same respect. But it's so funny, how they place themselves in your life,
Right.
because you're like, oh my God, these are just my friends.
Yeah. Do you've talked about how, writing in comics is a collaborative issue as much, as sometimes when you're soloing. It seems like writing though for like Robot Chicken and stuff, that probably was more collaborative. Was it like writing rooms where you guys spitball ideas more
Well,
often?
here's the crazy thing. It's not at all what you think at first.
Okay.
When we're working on Robot Chicken, is like at any given time, like 6 of us in a room, and we have a certain quota of sketches to hit. During those first 2.5 weeks, the room is deadly silent because everybody has to get their own sketches in. It's quiet. And I always say the same. It's not even a joke. It happened. One day, someone came in and put Girl Scout cookies on the table. There were like 9 sketches about Girl Scout cookies because you've got to come up with so many sketches. You're like, where am I pulling these from? And so it's a very quiet and focused room for like 2.5 weeks. And then once the sketches are chosen and voted on and they get into a main script, then it becomes what everybody thinks. Then it becomes we're all punching it up. We're having a great time. We're making every sketch better. We're laughing. But it is very funny that you think you're walking into a tomb because it's so quiet.
That's what I had a writer on for the What If series for Marvel.
Right.
And he was talking the same type of thing of like bringing comic stories to the table and going like, what about this? And then once it get picked, then they go, okay, here's what we can go with it. So
once you can relax, you've done your job. Now you're just, polishing. That's where the fun happens.
Right. Do you find different of those processes rewarding of like being able to have more collaboration with people as you're writing versus
Totally. And the further I get into my career, the more I welcome more collaboration because, I'm confident enough in my own abilities and I know what works for me and stuff. But like I said, with these artists where I'll give them something and I'm very specific. And if it comes back and I'm like, oh my God, this is even better than I thought. You know what I mean? So you got to give those people the opportunity to show it to you and also to be open to it. I had an editor on my first Marvel book who said to me, your job as a writer is to love everything the artist gives you unless it interferes with your story. If it changes your story, then you could say something. But if not, you need to just accept it. And it was kind of a good rule to live by because, you can get in your head like, oh, it's not exactly what I thought. But in so many ways, they're where they are because of what they do. And you've got to let them do their work as well.
Yeah. Well, that's so cool. Well, Kevin, I feel like I could talk to you forever about comics and the world of pop culture, but is there anything that we haven't hit on Host Mortem before I let you go that you wanted to mention or touch on real quick?
Just that don't be fooled by the fact that we got funded already. That's just a positive note to say this book is definitely happening, and if you decide to back it, you're definitely getting this book and hopefully anything that comes along with it. Like I said, my objective at this point is to get it in as many hands as I can because I'm so proud of the work that's being done by this creative team that I think they deserve the best. Yeah. And again, I have it linked at Kickstarter, but you could also find it at hostmortem.com.
Yeah. And I'll have the links, everything we talked about. The link to the Kickstarter will be in the description
Great.
of this video. If you're listening via podcast, Spotify, Apple Music, whatever, however you get your podcast, it'll be in the link in the description there as well. Kevin, I gotta ask you,
Yeah.
before I let you go, you got to host Where in Time Has Carmen San Diego. And for those of us growing up watching the show, like those theme songs stick in our head. Do
Yes.
you still have a love for those songs, or do like because you hear it so much, you're like, I can't handle it?
No, you know what? For some reason, it's just the love, and it shoots me back as if I shot it yesterday. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? The "Where in the World" was rockapella. On my show, we had the Engine Crew, but our theme song was written by Sean from Rockapella. So it was all in the family, and
Okay.
those songs, as you said, they get in your brain, and that's how you know they're good because
Yes.
you can't get rid of them. And no, I embrace them. I embrace them. I think they're fantastic.
You never know because some people are like, no, I heard it so much over there.
No, I know it, but it's so funny. I said to Sean Altman, who wrote it, I was like, I just love it. Thank God I love it because maybe I'd feel differently if it wasn't a great song. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's a good point. But it is great, and like I said, it shoots me right back to hosting those days, and just that was a great run. I really enjoyed that show. The great Lynn Thigpen, and yeah, so that's why Host Mortem came about because that's from my past, and I want to bring it forward.
I love it. I love it. So obviously, Host Mortem, go back to Kickstarter, click the link in this video or on the podcast so you can go support it. Kevin, is there anything else that you're working on that you wanted to mention, share?
You know what's funny is I will say if you're going to go to the hostmortem.com or Kickstarter, do it soon because these things have a timetable and they'll be wrapping up fairly shortly. I feel this year I shook the host tree and a lot dropped out. I told you how I came up with Host Mortem, and then I thought to myself, okay, well, I should promote this. Maybe should I talk to my agent about doing more hosting? And then an audition came across my desk, and I wound up getting it. And as a result, I am playing the host of all hosts, Dick Clark, in the new Michael Jackson movie, which I was like so blown away by that. The timing of it as well. I really felt I manifested that job.
So good. I mean, hey, if you know what you know, right? Like I'm a
Exactly.
host.
I mean, when I came across the audition, I was like, because I was already almost disappointed I wasn't going to get it. Like, this would be so perfect. And then when they called, they said, yeah, they want you for this. I was like, oh my God. So look, if you choose to a tier of Host Mortem with a signed book plate, you're not only getting Kevin Shinick, the writer and voiceover, you're also getting Dick Clark from the Michael Jackson movie.
So good. Oh man, Kevin, where can people follow along with you? Stay up to date with all that you're working on that you got coming out.
Absolutely. I'm at Kevin Shinick, and Shinick is Shinick across all social media. This inspired me, this whole Host Mortem thing, to do a Substack where I kind of, what's the question of the day? Back in the day, my question was like, who was the 12th president? Nowadays, it's like, what the hell's happening in my life and what do we do next and things like that. So it's fun questions that I answer. It's called Game Show Gumshoe. It's kevinshinnick.substack.com and my website, kevinshinnick.com.
Perfect. Gang, go back Host Mortem right now. Click the links, support. I can't wait to read this whole story. I love
I'm
a good murder
excited.
mystery. This seems right up there with it. And Kevin, thank you so much for just taking some time out of your schedule to talk about comics with
Of
me.
course. That's what we're here for. You know what I mean? That's what makes it fun.
So, well, gang, like I said, go back to Kickstarter. And with that being said, hopefully you can find some time to curl up, grab a book, and nerd out. Peace.